At that time, devotees from all over the European continent were coming to see Srila Prabhupada. It was a grand festival. But when they saw his physical conditions, their hearts were broken. But at the same time, they were in such ecstatic joy. Prabhupada's love for them was the love of the spiritual world. It was absolutely unconditional. It was Krishna's love. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj told me that when he got the news that Prabhupada was coming to the Bhaktivedanta Manor in London, he was in Eastern Europe, and he drove practically non-stop with Krishna Kshetra Prabhu and Bhakti Dayal Prabhu. They drove all the way to London. And when Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj found out that Ganesham Prabhu was there, he was rejoicing. This will make Prabhupada so happy. Because there was no greater happiness to the devotees than Srila Prabhupada's happiness. Whatever would make Prabhupada happy was the life and soul of every devotee. So Prabhupada's personal entourage, they understood what could make Prabhupada happier than seeing Ganesham Prabhu. His reports were the happiest, brightest moments. So Tamal Krishna Goswami personally went down and brought Ganesham Prabhu by the hand into Srila Prabhupada's quarters. He offered his prostrated obeisances to his Guru Maharaj. Srila Prabhupada smiled ear to ear with tears in his eyes to see his beloved Ganesham. He said, "Come here, come here." He came right up to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada embraced him with tears of love and gratitude. And then he rubbed Ganesham Prabhu's head and said, "Your life is successful. Thank you very much." Prabhupada said this with tears of gratitude in his eyes. And then Prabhupada expressed from his heart, he said, "This is the parampara system," as he rubbed Ganesham Prabhu's head with deep affection. This is the parampara system. My Guru Maharaj pushed me, and now I am pushing you, and you are pushing others to spread the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This was a type of mercy that was very, very rare. For Prabhupada to be crying and embracing and rubbing the head of a disciple was something very special. Soon all the devotees of Europe throughout Bhaktivedanta Manor were hearing about the good fortune of Ganesham Prabhu, the special mercy he received from Srila Prabhupada. How many of you have heard this story before? Now, there's a part of the story that Maharaj told me just a few months ago. Part 2. Devotees all over Europe, we're all in Bhaktivedanta Manor. No one got this mercy. Prabhupada crying, Prabhupada embracing, Prabhupada rubbing head, Prabhupada saying, "Your life is successful. You are carrying on the parampara." So Tamal Krishna Goswami was so moved by Prabhupada's pleasure. He was always thinking how to please Prabhupada more. So he had an idea, a fantastic idea, that because Ganesham Prabhu brought a new report with him and gave it to Tamal Krishna Goswami to read. Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj said, It will bring Prabhupada the greatest joy. For the first time ever, you please come and read the report personally to Srila Prabhupada. Oh, this was such an honor and pleasure for Ganesham Prabhu. So Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj said, today, Srila Prabhupada, Ganesham Prabhu will read the report to you of his preaching activities in Eastern Europe. Ganesham Prabhu was very reverential toward Prabhupada and quite nervous about doing this. But on the order of Goswami Maharaj, he started to read. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj told me, as he was reading, Srila Prabhupada looked totally disinterested. He didn't even look like he wanted to listen. He's reading, and Prabhupada's just talking to someone here, looking this way. And he was getting very nervous. He read one page. It was several pages. He read one page, and he really felt that he was disturbing Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada actually was looking just disinterested. And then Prabhupada stopped him and looked at him with a very grave, stern expression. And Ganesham Prabhu stopped reading. Prabhupada spoke. Krishna is the doer. Ganesham Prabhu was practically paralyzed. And Tamal Krishna Goswami, who watched the whole thing, he said, Ganesham Prabhu, I think it's time for you to leave now. So he offered his obeisances and came outside. And Maharaj told me that was one of the most intimate, loving experiences he's ever had in his life. Prabhupada's love for him. The first day, he embraced him. He cried tears of affection. He stroked his head and said, your life is successful. You are carrying on parampara. And the next day, it's not that Ganesham Prabhu did anything wrong that day. He just came in the next day. And Prabhupada just ignored him and instructed him. Krishna is the doer. Do not expect any credit for yourself. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj told me, all over the world, they know the first part of the story. Said, but for me, my favorite part of the whole story is the second part. Because that's when Prabhupada showed the most intimate, special love toward me. He showed his deep love and his deep gratitude, but at the same time wanted to protect him for all time to come. And Ganesham Prabhu said, those were the last words Prabhupada personally spoke to him. Krishna is the doer. And after going out of the room and offering his obeisances and thinking about it, he was ecstatic because he knew it was Prabhupada's most intimate love and mercy. Soon after this, in November of 1977, Srila Prabhupada departed from the world. The closing chapter of his pastimes on this earth caused the whole world of ISKCON to drown in an ocean of separation. Ganesham Prabhu was one of such persons. The thunderbolt of the news of Prabhupada's disappearance just struck our hearts and cast us into a realm of intense spiritual pain. We were only living to please Srila Prabhupada. We were only living for the next time he would come and see what we have done. But now he was not going to come anymore. Ganesham Prabhu, he took the order of his spiritual master as his life and soul. After Srila Prabhupada departed from this world, and for some years after that, many of his disciples fell away from their spiritual practices. Many removed themselves from the mission for various reasons. But a few people, including Ganesham Prabhu, felt that deep determination to follow in Prabhupada's footsteps. When Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur left this world, Srila Prabhupada made the order he gave him his life and soul. And even almost 40 years later, he went to the West and established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Ganesham Prabhu deeply studied Prabhupada's life and teachings and understood love for my Guru means surrender to his order, love and separation. Soon the library party, I believe, after they finished Eastern Europe, they covered South America. Now, one place in the world that was most difficult to preach, very, very difficult. In fact, so difficult that the few people that preached there were usually getting so sick and getting in so much trouble that it was intolerable. West Africa. Very difficult. Leaders of ISKCON appealed to Ganesham Prabhu to go to West Africa to preach. They are the people of your race, and you have received Prabhupada's mercy. Share it with them. He went. Very difficult. In 1978, Ganesham Prabhu came to New Vrindavan to accept the vows of a sannyasi. He decided to take sannyas from Kirtanananda Swami Maharaj. I was there for that ceremony. I would like to tell you a few things that I remember. But before telling you that, I'm going to tell you something else, very personal. It was in about 1973 or 4 that I first met Ganesham Prabhu. He came to New Vrindavan. And I remember we sat in this weeded field for hours and hours and hours talking about Prabhupada and Krishna. Just pure Krishna Katha. And from that time, we developed a very deep, loving friendship. And when he told me his name, Ganesham, I told him about a person named Ganesham that I once knew in Vrindavan town. And I told him many stories about Ganesham Baba. And one story that really struck him was how whenever I would come before Ganesham Prabhu, he would always fold his hands and greet me, "I am your obedient servant. I am your obedient servant." And after some time, he wouldn't even say servant. Ganesham would just address me with tears in his eyes, with such heartfelt humility. He would say, "I am your obedient." And after I told him this, Ganesham Prabhu, with folded hands and tears in his eyes, he said, "I am your obedient." And then I said to him, "I am your obedient." And from that time, in about 1973, this was always the way we addressed each other, with so much affection and joy. "I am your obedient." And whenever he would say it, there was just so much intimacy, sweetness, and love in his heart. "I am your obedient." It was in about 1973. He was in India, and he went with a few devotees to Jagannath Puri. At that time, in history, I do not believe a single foreign devotee of ISKCON had ever been inside Jagannath's temple. Now, in one exchange between Bhakti Dhira Swami Maharaj and Prabhupada, Prabhupada was so pleased with his service that Prabhupada told him, "You will see Krishna in this lifetime." So Bhakti Dhira Maharaj was thinking, maybe I'll see Krishna as Jagannath in this lifetime. So he was thinking, I have a very black complexion. Perhaps they'll think I'm from South India. And they will allow me in. But he knew they banned, in those days they even banned Indian devotees from ISKCON, because they considered that Indian devotees were associating with Western devotees. So they had no right to enter into Jagannath's temple. So he was thinking, I'll wear karmi clothes. I'll wear regular civilian dress. Then they'll never think I'm from ISKCON. But he didn't have any karmi clothes. So he just asked some people, and he borrowed a set of clothes that didn't even fit him, just some pants and shirt. And then he tied a gamsha around his head because his head was shaved with sika. And there were big crowds. And he walked right through the gatekeepers. And he went deeper and deeper, and it was mass crowds of people. Thousands and thousands of people in that hall. And he went by the Garuda Stamba, and people were having very difficult time coming close to Jagannath. But he saw Jagannath from a great distance. But meanwhile, he was just praying to Jagannath, if they catch me now that I'm inside, they're going to beat me. They're going to really beat me. I don't know what will happen. So all of a sudden, the pandas and the pujaris, they just stopped all the crowds. And they were choosing people that they thought they had money and called them forward. And one of the pandas called Bhakti Dhira Swami, who was in disguise. He said, "You, come." But he said it in Orient language. And Bhakti Dhira Swami was really afraid, because he's going to talk to him. And he only speaks English. He doesn't speak any language except English. So he was thinking, what am I going to say? I'll tell him that I'm an Indian, but I was brought up in America and I only know English. So the person started talking to him, and he didn't say anything. He was asking him questions, very seriously asking him questions. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj couldn't understand a word he was saying, and he didn't know what to respond, so he just remained silent, as if he was playing to Lord Jagannath. So the person actually brought him right up to the altar, and pushed his head right on the altar near Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra's lotus feet, and let him stand right inches from Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra to offer his prayers of love. Then he took him to circumambulate Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. And meanwhile, so many other pandas wanted to try to get money from him, but this one panda was saying, he's mine, he's mine. And then in the end, after he had this amazing darshan of Jagannath, he offered prayer. He told me that he prayed to Lord Jagannath to protect all the devotees in ISKCON, to give them pure bhakti, and to empower them to please Srila Prabhupada by spreading the mission all over the world. This was his only prayer, that he could be an instrument of mercy and compassion in his life, and that all the devotees would be happy in Krishna consciousness. That was his prayer to Jagannath. Then as this pujari, who was a chief pujari, was escorting him out, he spoke to him in English. He said, I know who you are. He said, I don't agree that you people should not be allowed in the temple. So I have given you this darshan. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj told us it was such a divine spiritual experience that the next day he thought he'll do it again. Actually, it was that night. Yes, it was that same night. So late at night, he again put on the gamsha on his head and put on his unfitting civilian clothes, and he walked in, and then Pandas discovered him. He was an Indian, and they started screaming at him and chasing him, and he had to run away, and people were trying to stop him. But he said he was quite, from his dancing, he was in very good condition. So he ran, and people were trying, and he finally just ran out of the Singadwaram. And then he realized that we should be satisfied with what Krishna has given us. But as far as I know, he was the first foreign devotee of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness to ever personally have the darshan of the Ishtadev of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jagannath Baladev Subhadramai. Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj ki. Prabhupada's prophecy came true. You will see Krishna in this life. He loved his name, Ganasham, which is Krishna's name, which means he is beautiful, beautiful like a dark monsoon rain cloud. And he used to tell me that Prabhupada gave me perfect name because I'm very dark. But how a monsoon rain cloud pours showers and showers of rain upon fields and rivers that are just drying up. In the same way, Krishna showers his mercy on those living entities within this world who are just drying up, starving due to forgetfulness of him, being burnt by the scorching heat of material existence, Krishna showers his sweet mercy. Therefore, he is Ganesham. He loved his name, Ganesham Prabhu. Oh, how he loved it. Prabhupada gave him that name. So he came to New Vrindavan at the Radha Vrindavan Chandra temple in Bahulaban. And first he sat at the fire as a brahmachari, Ganesham Prabhu. And then he was asked to go out of the room and change into sannyasi cloth. And I remember a very dear devotee named Sri Galim. He helped, because he was at one time personal servant of Vishnu Jana Maharaj. He taught Ganesham Prabhu how to put on the clothes of a sannyasi, because it's different than brahmachari clothes. So he came out, and the lecture was given, and then Kirtanananda Maharaj handed him the danda and said, your new name will be Bhakti Dhira Swami Maharaj. And I was looking at Ganesham Prabhu's face. He was shocked. He couldn't believe he changed my name. Because Prabhupada practically never changed a person's name. He just, if you were Satsvarup Das, you became Satsvarup Goswami. Vishnu Jan Das, Vishnu Jan Goswami. Tamal Krishna Das, Tamal Krishna Goswami. Yes? It was very, very unheard of to change a person's name. And I looked at his face. I was looking at him, and he said, your new name is Bhakti Dhira Swami. First, I saw in his face like shock. Like, what did you do? I could see in his eyes, he was saying, I'm attached to my name, Ganesham, you just changed it. And then I saw just a huge smile on his face and just totally blissful, just because sannyas means surrender, renunciation. And he just blissfully accepted the name Bhakti Dhira Swami Maharaj. And after taking his vows and receiving the sannyas mantra, there was the fire yajna, and after the fire yajna, there was a kirtan. In front of the beautiful deities of Radha Vrindavan Chandra, devotees from all over New Vrindavan were gathered, men, women, and children, ecstatically chanting. This was the first kirtan of Bhakti Dhira Swami. And he was so ecstatic, he was so energized, just renouncing his life for Prabhupada's service. The spirit of sannyas means your body, your mind, your words, and your life exclusively property of Guru and Krishna, and there's no other consideration. That is sannyas. And he took those vows with the true spirit that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all the acharyas had taken sannyas. Not for fame, not for prestige, not for position, but for service, absorption. So he was ecstatic. And for the first time in history, Bhakti Dhira Maharaj danced with a danda. Now later on, it became a legendary pastime, but this was the first. And he was dancing wild, magnificent, graceful, but dancing ecstatically with his danda in his hand and his sannyas cloth. And at one point, he just leaped high in the air, calling out, Haribo! And his danda raised up in his raised arms. And right when he was way high in the air, his dhoti fell off. Just fell right off onto the ground, and he was just in midair in his kopans, his loincloth. And with one hand, he was trying to grab his dhoti, and the other hand, he had his danda, and he was it was a culture shock for him. And then he just picked up his dhoti and tried to just really quickly just cover his loincloth. And I remember I said to him, I said, Maharaj, you are really renounced. I said, Maharaj, you are following in the footsteps of the 6 Goswamis. They also only wore kopans. And he was really embarrassed. He said, I don't know what to do. I said, maybe we should go outside and try to put it on better. So he went outside and he tied such a tight knot to that dhoti. He just tied it and pulled it and made a double knot and pulled it and then went right back into the kirtan, grabbed his dand and started dancing in ecstasy. But in the meanwhile, when he was dancing, all the men, women, and children were all in a big circle around him when his dhoti fell off. And the men were like shocked, and the women were covering their faces with their saris, and the children were laughing. That was the first kirtan of Bhakti Dhira Swami Maharaj. And when he came back into the temple room was so surcharged because, we were thinking he was embarrassed or something, but he just came in with this gigantic ear-to-ear, brilliant smile with those white teeth just glistening and radiating energies. And he started dancing, and he got everybody dancing. The whole temple was shaking and shaking and shaking for hours and hours and hours. On the request of his godbrothers, he based himself in Africa. When he went there, the movement had a couple fledgling centers that were falling apart. Very difficult. It was just so impossible to preach there. I believe he first went to Nigeria. And practically all the preaching, Prabhupada said, one time Prabhupada came to Kenya, where they opened a center in Nairobi, and so many Indian people came. And Prabhupada chastised. He said, it's nice so many Indian people are coming, but Africa is a place of Africans. Why are you not preaching to the Africans? The reason was because it was so difficult. Nobody knew how. But Bhakti Dhira Swami, he just had such determination, such a creative intelligence, empowered by Krishna. He was just making dozens and dozens and dozens of devotees, opening centers, starting farm communities. It was incredible what he was doing. He told us how difficult preaching in Africa was. Would you like to hear a few things? He said, for a person who's not born and raised in Africa, there are so many diseases. Far worse than India. That's one of the reasons any person from the West, from the Hare Krishna movement, could not survive in Africa. So many diseases. Always getting sick. He said the food that the devotees cooked for him was unpalatable. He could never digest it. And it just tasted obnoxious. He said that when you make these tribal people, when they turn against you, you make their son or their daughter a devotee, you don't know what's going to happen. It's a regular thing amongst those people. If you want to kill someone, you put poison in their food. He was getting threats from the parents of the devotees that they would poison him. And other persons were practicing voodoo. Do you know what is voodoo? It is like an African type of tantricism. And they put curses, and the curses are actually effective. Those voodoo curses can torture people, can cause people to go insane, to cause people illnesses, terminal illnesses. The voodoo curses have the power to kill people. And all sorts of people were putting voodoo curses on him. Powerful people. People were hiring voodoo priests to put curses on him. But he persevered. Very difficult. But one of the most difficult things is the instability in the governments. Because he was telling us that if you didn't have government support, they would crush you. But the problem is, if the government supports you, and you become in any way close to the government, then if another party takes over the government, you're finished. Because it's a very revolutionary place. They have political coups. Happens all the time in West Africa, where some party of mafia people or gangsters or military just forcibly, violently take over the government. And there's certain regulative principles of what you do when you kill the prime minister, you kill the president, you kill all the cabinet members, and you kill any party that's close to the previous government. And the coups are happening regularly. And they were happening regularly while he was there. So he explained that if you don't come close to the government, they'll crush you, they'll shut you down. And if you do get close to the government, if there's a military or mafia takeover, then you're going to be killed because you're close to the previous government. So with such intelligent sensitivity, he had to simultaneously achintya beta beta tattva. He had to get close enough to get the support of the government, but far enough so that if there was a takeover, and the takeovers did come while he was there, that they didn't connect you as being close to them. Very tense, anxiety-ridden situation. And for a person from America, the heat of West Africa was oppressing. And they had no air conditioners. It's a very, very poor country. And the people he was preaching to were mostly tribal people, very, very poor. City, but still very poor. No facilities. Very primitive circumstances, disease, heat, death threats, voodoo curses. And yet, despite all that, and there was even revolutions amongst the devotees, taking over the temples. And some of the top devotees were threatening to kill him. Very difficult. But he stayed. And what happened in Africa? Because of his determination, his enthusiasm, his dedication, and his incredible compassion, it was expanding like nowhere else in the world. Soon, he was regularly on every major television station preaching. He was in all the media, major newspapers, major magazines, major radio shows. He became a national hero. The prime ministers, the presidents, the heads of states were coming for spiritual guidance from him. In fact, he was awarded the highest civilian honor a person could get. He was made an honorary chief of the Wari tribe in Nigeria. That's the highest position a civilian could get. There was a whole ceremony where they coronated him the king of a tribe. He had such immense influence. He became a spiritual counselor for Nelson Mandela. He became a spiritual counselor for, at that time, in the 1980s, this person was voted the most popular man in the entire planet Earth. Time magazine, Life magazine, they all came together and they made a poll amongst the people of the world, the most popular man on earth. And at that time, who was it? Muhammad Ali. Now, you are all from Chopati, Bombay, India. I do not know if you know who is Muhammad Ali, but he was the world champion fighter. He was the athlete of all athletes. He was another success story. He was born in the ghettos of Louisville, Kentucky, downtrodden. Just to survive, he had to learn how to fight, and he made it into an art and a science. And he became the world champion boxer. His name is Cassius Clay. And he was a pacifist, because at that time there was a Vietnam War, and he was drafted to go into the military, and he filed as a conscientious objector. That means according to his religion, he adopted Islam as his religion. According to his religion, he follows nonviolence. He cannot fight or be violent. It would be nice if all people of that faith followed this principle. Of course, he was beating people up like anything in the boxing ring. But that was an occupation. So he went to prison for nonviolence. And that just increased his popularity more. So now here he's the most popular man in all the world. Very difficult to meet somebody like this, so high in the public eye. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was regularly going to his house to give him spiritual guidance. He was confiding in Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. He was telling Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's problems and asking him how to overcome his weaknesses. Yes, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was becoming so influential in the world that the United Nations was calling for him for counseling, guidance, and advice. Heads of countries were calling for him. Celebrities. In the early 1980s, during apartheid in Durban, South Africa, was the grand opening of the Radharanath Temple. Magnificent, one of the most beautiful temples in all the world. Nelson Mandela was the chief guest. The devotees of the leaders of ISKCON called Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj to come to South Africa to give the opening address representing ISKCON. One of the most historical speeches ever given in ISKCON. There were the leaders of all the various religions and all the various political parties. Everyone was there for this function. Yes, Gopal? And Bhakti Tirtha Swami's address just enthralled everyone's hearts. He spoke so powerfully, so convincingly, so charmingly. Then he announced the welcoming of Nelson Mandela. And Nelson Mandela, so impressed by Bhakti Tirtha Swami's words and his incredible devotion, just came to the stage and embraced Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And from that point on, they were dear friends. Nelson Mandela, on many occasions, they met and received spiritual guidance from His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj. So during that time, he was preaching, besides Africa, in Washington, D.C. And a very creative genius, he created the Institute for Applied Spiritual Technology, in the same spirit as the Bhaktivedanta Institute, a very specialized way of preaching to specialized type of people. So he had his institute right in the heart of Washington, D.C., in a beautiful house just down the road from the White House, where the president lived. Very prestigious location. And at that time, I was just staying in Bombay about 11 months a year. And just to keep the connection to New Vrindavan, because if I didn't keep the connection, it could have been a very political difficulty. I mean, it could have been upheavals. There were even traces of it happening. Very different. I was trying to keep politics away. So during my time in America, when I would first come and before I'd leave, I would drive a van to Washington, D.C. to spend several days with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And those days were so intensely intimate and sweet. We would have conversations every day that would last 14 or 15 hours. We would go to the morning program. After the morning program, we'd sit around a little table and take prasad and start talking. And then after prasad, we'd sit and talk. And then the conversation would carry on as we, about 6 hours later, when we'd sit around a table and eat lunch prasad. And we'd carry on talking. Sometimes we'd walk through the forest or something. And the conversation would carry on until night. And usually at about midnight, we'd still be talking. And then he'd put these 2 sheets on the floor, because we both sleep on the floor. And we both lay on the floor next to each other to go to sleep. And we'd usually end up talking until about 4 in the morning. And then we'd get up, we didn't even sleep, we just laid there talking. And then we'd get up for Mangal Arati, and then the whole morning program, and then start talking again. Very intimate, soul-searching, loving discussions, pouring our hearts out to one another. We really bonded in a very special and unique way as friends at that time. Of course, later on we both understood that what ISKCON leadership had done was really the right thing that had to be done. But somehow or other we were in a circumstance where we both prayed to Prabhupada from the core of our hearts and heard his calling that we should continue the service that we were doing to protect the devotees. So many wonderful, wonderful, wonderful devotees. Somehow protect them and keep them in Krishna consciousness beyond all this stuff happening. I remember one, should I continue? when I was one of the people who for years was assisting me in my preaching to colleges was one of my god sisters. I'd like to tell you a little about her. You see, what would happen is I would give classes in the colleges on philosophy and the Gita, sociology, history, and just speak bhakti to them from different points of view. And we were doing harinams, and we were doing book tables, and we were doing cooking classes, and any creative way to somehow get people to come. We were having Sunday programs, and soon every night of the week we had programs at different colleges. And gradually people came forward and became devotees, and then those people from those towns actually sponsored and started the temples. It was very wonderful. But I was the main person that was cultivating people. And almost half the people coming who were really taking serious interest were ladies. And I began the project as a brahmachari, but at this time I was a sannyasi, and I felt that women should be preaching to cultivate intimately these women. So I went to one of my god sisters, who was one of the most spontaneously enthusiastic lovers of Krishna I have ever seen in my life. Her name was Hladini. Now, Hladini was the pujari for Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra for many years. She was the head pujari at Madhuban farm. Well, what happened is she was getting dreams of Lord Nityananda Prabhu, who told her to go out and preach. And then she'd have dreams of Balaram, saying, "How could you leave me? You have to stay and take care of me. You're my pujari." So she didn't know what to do. One night she'd have a dream, Nityananda saying, "All this ringing of the bells is for neophytes. Go out and preach." And then Balaram, who's Lord Nityananda, would say, "But your ringing of your bells and your puja is giving me great pleasure. You cannot leave me. You must continue being pujari." So she would write me all these letters. I still have some of them, where she would be trying to get guidance. What should I do? So finally, Nityananda Prabhu was victorious. So finally, Nityananda Prabhu was victorious. And she got deities of Gaur Nitai. And she went out, and she wanted to know what to do. She came to me, she said, "I need to preach. Nityananda Prabhu wants me to preach. Nityananda Prabhu wants me to preach. But I don't know anything about preaching. I've been living on this farm covered with mud, doing pujari work and cutting wood and cooking for the last 15 years. What should I do?" I said, "I know exactly what you should do. We'll get you a van, and you start a women's party and travel to all these college preaching centers and preach to all the women and cultivate them and make them devotees." So she said, "Yes, I'm very enthusiastic." But she kept one of Balaram's shoes, and for her whole life, the shoe of Balaram was her pillow. It was a wooden shoe, too. She always slept her head on the shoe of Balaramji, wooden sandal, to always be in Balaram's service, in the form of Lord Nityananda Prabhu. And I remember one time in, I think it was Cincinnati or Columbus, we were doing a Harinam, and we had a book table, and she had her, wherever we did anything, she would always set up her Gaur Nitai deities, about this big. And the police came, and arrested us. I was not there at the time, because I would be traveling different places. But the police came to arrest, and Ladini, she said, "You cannot arrest us without arresting them." She pointed to the deities. They said, "They're those dolls, arrest dolls?" She said, "No, they are not dolls. It is on their order that we are here chanting the holy names and distributing books and prasad. It is on their order. How can you arrest us without arresting them?" And she spoke with such conviction. They said, "What are you talking about? What are you talking? Arrest? They're not even people." She said, "No, they are people. We are here under their order. You cannot arrest us without arresting them." So the police arrested the deities. And they took the devotees and the deities to jail for doing Harinam Kirtan without permit or something like that. And when they went to see the magistrate, she was saying the same thing. She was saying she brought the deities with her. It is on their order. They have ordered us. Krishna is your mother. Krishna is your father. Krishna is your life and soul. Krishna is your treasure. Chant Hare Krishna. Worship Krishna. Follow the teachings of Krishna. They have ordered us to give this message all over the world. We're helpless. Whatever your laws are, we cannot follow them, because they have given us their instruction. And she spoke with such conviction that the magistrate, the judge, actually said, "Well, if you're following their instructions, then how can I arrest you? Just go out and follow their instructions." She didn't need a lawyer. She had her Kornitai as her advocate. This was her faith. But when I was there, she was doing unbelievable. I'll tell you something about her. Her love for Krishna was so contagious that any female student or townsperson that I would connect to her, that person could not give up her association. They had to become devotees. They just wanted to help her in every way. They became blissful. She was just love of God personified. Amazing person. But then when I was sent to India and had to stay there, and later on New Vrindavan, they made many changes. There was no kirtans. There was no devotee dress. So many things. And she was so deeply immersed in Chaitanya Charitamrita and the traditions of Gaudiya Vaishnavism that these changes were breaking her heart. When I came, she was crying. She said, "I can't stay here. I can't follow this. But I don't want to offend anyone. Please help me." So Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj came to New Vrindavan. And Ladini and I went to New Vrindavan. And he gave a class where he was talking about the incredible preaching he was doing in Africa. So about a week later, she asked me, "Do I have your blessings to go to Africa?" Because there I could just worship Lord Nityananda without all these restrictions. So I said, "Let us talk with Maharaj." So she drove her van, I drove mine. We met at the Institute for Applied Spiritual Technology, and the three of us met in Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's room. It was a very deep, wonderful talk. She practically didn't say a word. I had to do all the speaking. She was just sitting there with her tears in her eyes. And in the end, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj just He said, this is the greatest benediction for Africa, to get a devotee like you. Is this really what you want? And then she said, Maharaj, please accept me as your servant. And she went to Africa. Now, should I tell you an interesting story about Vladini? She was superbly excellent at preaching to people one-on-one, but she had never given a class in her life. She always longed to go to Vrindavan. So one time I arranged for her to come to India. And we took her to Vrindavan, Govardhan, Parikrama, Barsana, Nandagaon, so many places. She was intoxicated with spiritual love the whole time she was there. It was amazing to see her. And then we brought her back to Bombay. And at that time, Radha Gopinath Temple was just a little dungeon downstairs with rats and roaches and so-called brahmacharis. And we weren't even allowed to come at that time. Brahmacharis didn't like us. You remember? So, so we were having our Bhagavatam classes at Srinathji Prabhu's house. So one day I asked Vladini that you please give class today. And she just froze like a statue. She said, no, I've never given a class. I cannot give a class. No, I will not give a class. And I said, Vladini Devi, please give Bhagavatam class. They would love to hear from you. She said, these are all civilized, cultured people, and I'm like an animal. I'm a beast. How can I give class to them? I have no qualification. I don't know the philosophy. This is the one thing I cannot do. I will not give class. She said, I'll leave this place if you make me give class. I can't do it. I won't do it. I said, all right, I'll give class. So we were all sitting. There was about 20, 25 devotees gathered in Srinathji Prabhu's living room at Sea-Face Park. And I chanted Jai Radha Madhava, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Read the Sanskrit, the verse, the purport. And then I said, and now Vladini Mataji will give class. And I got up and walked right out. And she said, no, no, no. And I just kept walking, and I closed the door, and I locked the door. So and just went out of the house and went down the stairs, and she couldn't find me. And meanwhile, she was sitting there, and the devotees put the book in front of her, put the microphone in front of her. Now, what could she do? She started speaking. A few minutes later, I came back up the stairs, and I opened the door a little crack so she wouldn't see me to listen. And she was preaching. Magnificent class. She was preaching with such enthusiasm. At the beginning, she was just, for the first 10 minutes, she just apologized for not being qualified. And then she gave about a 2-hour class. And the devotees were enthralled. They were spellbound. And after that day, she never stopped giving Srimad Bhagavatam classes. So when she went to Africa, soon she was leading Harinam Sankirtan parties and getting hundreds of little African kids to dance and chant, just what she loved to do. She was cooking prasad and distributing it to them. She was really a mother. She was giving fantastic classes to the devotees, and soon she was on television, radio, magazines, newspaper interviews. Practically every day she was a media sensation. Heads of state, government officials were coming to take shelter of her. She was doing unbelievable preaching. She was totally fearless. And it was Bhakti Dhira Swami Maharaj's inspiration. They had such a deep connection. Story. But after some years, there was a political takeover in Liberia where she happened to be preaching, and her and about 8 other devotees were killed. They were shot dead. What happened is they invaded this gangster mob that took over the government, raided the temple in the middle of the night, and lined up all the men to kill them, and told Ladini, because you're a woman, we're not going to harm you. You can go. Devotee men, and she couldn't tolerate it. Weeks before this incident, she wrote me a letter. And she said, the only thing in life that I fear is offending a Vaishnava. There's no other fear I have in life. And she was telling me about the life and death situation in Liberia. When they started shooting devotees, she cried out, you cannot do this. You cannot kill devotees. And she literally, there was military people with guns all around, rifles, and the leader was shooting with a pistol. She ran right up to the leader and grabbed his arm so he couldn't kill the devotees. She said, you cannot do this. You cannot do this. She knew that she would be killed. She literally, physically grabbed the hand of the president of the nation who took over the government, for he wouldn't shoot the devotees. They just aimed their guns at her and killed her. She would rather die than stand idly as devotees were being killed. That was her integrity. Bhakti Dhira Swami Maharaj had such deep gratitude, appreciation for Ladini. Their relationship on a totally, purely spiritual level was something extraordinary. Passed away, Maharaj told me that in previous life she had male body, and they were both devotees, and they were most intimate, loving friends, like brothers. He said that our relationship is so deep on such a spiritual platform that goes back to previous births. You want to take prasad, please go. If you want to hear about Bhakti Dhira Maharaj, you will be much more benefited. Prasad will be there till any time. While he was doing these heroic devotional deeds in Prabhupada's service in Africa, at the same time, he was developing one of the most successful projects in the world in the capital of America, Washington, D.C. The Institute of Applied Spiritual Technology was reaching so many people. Maharaj was having classes at, I believe it was Howard University, a very highly esteemed educational institute in Washington, D.C. Maharaj was such a compassionate person. To be a preacher, it's not just a matter of speaking philosophy. It's a matter of transforming people's hearts, awakening love of God in people's hearts, getting people to be deeply attached to the association of devotees and the holy name of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada, when he came to America, he saw so many millions of innocent souls who are part and parcel of Krishna, who were being cheated and exploited by Maya. We have to save them. Prabhupada made many adjustments in the presentation of Krishna consciousness to reach the people according to Kala Desha Patra, the time, place, and circumstance, but without ever changing the message. So Maharaj saw in the 1980s, it wasn't like the 60s and 70s. There wasn't many people joining the movement. We had to somehow or other reach them in a way that was relevant to their interest. So he explored grounds that were very interesting. He targeted which types of people are going to be most inclined to accepting Krishna consciousness. So he was giving seminars and lectures, appealing to the New Age people. He was giving lectures from a point, Krishna consciousness from the point of view of psychology, psychiatry, conflict resolution, politics. He was giving lectures on UFOs, unidentified flying objects. All these various occult subjects. He was reaching people's hearts. And it was considered controversial. We don't accept these things. But what was the result? The result is he would gain people's confidence. He would gain people's love. And then he would gradually train them in Krishna consciousness. He was getting PhDs, doctors, psychologists, professors. They were chanting 16 rounds. They were following the regulative principles. They were scrutinizingly studying Prabhupada's books. They were sold out to the mission of ISKCON. They took initiation. The most qualified devotees in all of America, most all of them, were becoming Krishna conscious by the incredible efforts of Bhakti Dhira Swami Maharaj. Now, some of the things he's done has been criticized and controversial. But I can tell you, from my deep conviction, whoever criticizes simply does not understand the compassion and broad-mindedness of this personality. When I was at Gitanagari, I was seeing qualified, intelligent people that came from those innovative, creative, indirect preaching programs. They would have never, ever, ever associated with devotees any other way, and now they are full-fledged, perfectly cultured, wonderful Gaudiya Vaishnavas. You could judge a thing by its result. You can judge a tree by its fruit. It was his deep compassion to reach people's hearts that he approached people in such incredibly genius ways in the Western world and brought them to the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada and Gaur Nitai, where they surrendered. Bhakti Dhira Swami Maharaj ki. Meanwhile, we were still meeting every year, several times. And we'd sit at the table and eat. And we'd lay on the floor and talk. And we'd lay on the floor and talk. And we'd walk and we'd talk. And we'd sit and we'd talk. But we talked. Because whatever was building up in my heart, I had to save for Bhakti Dhira Maharaj. And same for him. It was a beautiful relationship. And one of the things, every time we met, one of the things we always discussed for at least a half hour was the amazing grace that we both had that we never got malaria. Because in India, so many people get malaria. And in Africa, so many people get malaria. And he would always say, I've been in Africa for so many years. Every devotee gets malaria. I never got malaria. And I said, I've been in India so many years. So many devotees get malaria. I never got malaria. So that we always discussed. For about 8 years, we discussed this malaria subject. And I can tell you that both of us were developing some pride. There's a certain pride of never getting malaria. Because what else can someone like me get proud of? Anyways, one year I got malaria. Dwarkadish Prabhu, Dr. Alawa can tell you all about it. It was so severe. I had fever and I was sweating and they gave me medicine, and every time they gave me medicine I would vomit it up. They brought me to hospital. Before there was a Bhaktivedanta, some other hospital. And they had to give me intravenous injections to try to somehow or other relieve this malaria. And the whole time I was there, I was thinking, how am I going to explain this to Bhakti Dhira Maharaj? I'm a traitor. To my great surprise, the next time we met, he told me, Maharaj, I have a confession to make. I said, what? He said, I got malaria. We exchanged notes, and it turned out we both came down with the fever at the same day, at the same time. And we were both admitted to hospital on the same day, at the same time, in the same year. He was in Africa, I was in India. And we were probably bitten by mosquitoes at the same time, too. But we were both rejoicing. Just see our connection. Bhakti Dhira Maharaj traveled all over the world. His enthusiasm, his determination, and his compassion was unlimited. Wherever he went, he would mesmerize devotees' hearts. He would melt their hearts. He was so personal in his concern for everyone. Because he came from a minority family and he was persecuted his whole youth, he had a very soft heart and sympathy for any devotee who was being mistreated. He had this nature where he never judged anyone. He was everyone's well-wisher and friend, whatever their condition. And with this spirit, he traveled around the world preaching the pure message of Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada. His kirtans were famous throughout the 14 worlds. There was no one who danced like him. He could dance hour after hour after hour after hour. He was in his late 40s and then in his 50s, and still, he would never stop. He had such a spontaneous taste for the holy name. I remember when he was a brahmachari, devotees used to come and tell me at New Vrindavan that there is this brahmachari named Ganesham. We've never seen anyone chant japa like him. He'll just sit right in front of Prabhupada, intensely chanting the holy name with such intensity. He really was addicted to the holy name. He never missed his rounds his whole life. after took initiation. If he had to stay up all night, if he had to do anything, but never would he give up his vow of chanting. And for him, minimum 20 rounds a day, but usually 42. His sadhana was so deep and so powerful, so exemplary. His kirtans were with so much enthusiasm. I remember one year he came to Radha Gopinath temple and he led Mangalarti, and before they even lit the incense, everyone was dancing in ecstasy. Do you remember that? And they didn't stop dancing. And after the conch shell blew, they're still dancing. Running all over the temple, running back and forth in circles everywhere for Mangalarti. He was simply spontaneously intoxicated with the holy name. And he would play that drum with that stick. You have seen, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Sometimes his disciples talk to me and I say, Prabhu, you have to talk louder because I've been at so many kirtans with your guru's drum that I... Yes, in Mayapur Dham during the GBC meetings, he was one of the highlights of the whole world's hearts, is to participate in Bhakti Tirtha Swami's dancing kirtans. And his lectures, so brilliant, so to the point, always relevant to devotees' lives. He didn't just speak theory. He spoke the pure Siddhanta of Gaudiya Vaishnavism in a way that really is what devotees needed to hear, according to their problems, according to their consciousness, according to their struggles, according to their inspirations. It was unbelievable. He was such an inspirational speaker. I believe the most powerful speaker of ISKCON. He would just get so absorbed in what he was saying. I'll give you one example. During the International Festival in Mayapur, he was giving a lecture, the last day of the GBC meetings. Over 1,000 devotees all over the world assembled in the Panchatattva temple, and Maharaj was speaking. And he was speaking about dedication to Srila Prabhupada, loyalty to ISKCON, surrender to Krishna. And he was speaking with such power. His voice was just tumultuously echoing in all directions. His body was just expressing his heart's compassion and devotion. And it became just to such a summit that at a certain point in his lecture, devotees were just at the edge of their seats. And all of a sudden, his watch flew off his wrist. His coat flew off his body, and his hat just flew into the air. And the sannyasi sitting next to me looked at me and went, wow, I've never seen anything like this. Srila Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj ki. He was enthusiastic.
Yasoda Bhavani. Bhojanande Priya Krishna Subhasita Bari. Sabe Mukha Prakaloy Kore Sari Sari. Asta Mukha Prakaliya Jada Sakagane. Anande Vishrama Kore Baladeva Sane. Jambula Rasalane Tambula Masala. Tahake Krishna Chandra Suke Nidradela. Vishalaka Shiki Pucha Chamara Dulaya. Apurva Sayaya Krishna Suke Nirayaya. Yasomati Anga Priye Danishtaya Nito. Shri Krishna Prasad Radha Kunje Hoye Prito. Lalithari Saki Gana Avashesha Paya. Mane Mane Sukhe Radha Krishna Guna Gaya. Hari Lila Ekamatra Jahara Pamoda. Bhogarati Gaita Bhakti Vibhuda. Vatsala Sri Gaura Hari. Vatsala Sri Gaura Hari. Sri Gaura Hari Sahi Gosta Bihari. Sri Gaura Hari Sahi Gosta Bihari. Nanga Jasomati Chita Hari. Nanga Jasomati Chita Hari. Raja Govinda Govinda Gopala. Raja Govinda Govinda Gopala. Raja Govinda Govinda Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma. Shri Guru Charana Padma. Hare Krishna. आरती हो